They say a man's home is his castle, but when I walked through the door that Thursday evening, mine felt more like a war zone. The house was too quiet, unnervingly so. Tyler and Lily were upstairs coloring, their innocent giggles a fragile shield against the chaos brewing downstairs. And then Tyler said it, casual as anything, like he was telling me about the weather. "Mom's with. My name's Alex. I'm a 35-year-old carpenter, and if there's one thing I've always been good at, it's building things, making them solid, reliable, able to withstand storms." It's funny, though, how life doesn't always follow the rules of craftsmanship. The past year has been a test, one I never saw coming. It's not with splintering under pressure, but my marriage. And no matter how many nails I drive into the framework, I can't seem to hold it together. I've got 2 kids, Tyler, who's 8, and Lily, 5. They're my whole world. You want to know what keeps a man going when everything else is falling apart? It's their little faces lighting up when you walk through the door. It's the bedtime stories and their laughter echoing in the hallway. They don't care how tired I am or how calloused my hands get from working all day. They just want me to be there, steady and dependable. For them, I'd do anything. But then there's Emma, my wife of 10 years. When I first met her, she was everything I'd ever wanted: warm, funny, supportive. She was the kind of woman who made a house feel like a home. Back then, we had this dream of building a life together, raising a family, and maybe even growing old in the same little house I'm trying to keep standing now. That dream feels like a ghost lately, something I catch glimpses of but can never quite touch. Emma has changed, and not in a small way. Over the past year, she's grown distant. It's not just the coldness in her tone or the sharp comments she throws my way, it's the way she looks right through me, like I'm furniture she doesn't even notice anymore. At first, I thought it was just stress. Life hasn't been easy on us. My work keeps me on my feet all day, and she's been home with the kids more since her job hours got cut. But then the drinking started. A glass of wine with dinner turned into 2, and 2 turned into her lounging on the couch with a half-empty bottle by her side. The Emma I knew would have hated that. It's not just the drinking, though. She's become unpredictable, like a storm I can't prepare for. One minute, she's laughing at something Tyler said, the next, she's snapping at him for spilling his juice. I catch her saying things to me just to get a rise out of me, like she enjoys seeing how far she can push before I finally snap. But I won't snap. I can't. Not with Tyler and Lily in the picture. They've seen enough already. Tyler started asking me why Mom doesn't eat dinner with us some nights or why she's always too tired to play with them. He's sharp, that one, too sharp for his age. And Lily, she doesn't ask questions, but I can see it in the way she clings to me, her little arms wrapped tight around my neck like she's afraid I'll disappear if she lets go. The worst part is, I don't have answers for them. I don't even have answers for myself. What happened to Emma? To us? I try to remind myself of the good times, of the woman who used to curl up next to me on the couch and talk about our future. But those memories feel like someone else's life now. I've thought about saying something to her, confronting her about the way she's been acting. But every time I try, she just brushes me off or twists the conversation into a game I can't win. "Oh, don't be so serious, Alex," she'll say, waving me off with that smirk that used to be charming but now feels like a slap in the face. "You're always so dramatic." So, I keep my mouth shut. I focus on the things I can control: getting the kids to school, putting dinner on the table, tucking them in at night. I tell myself I'm doing it for them, but the truth is, I'm doing it for me, too. I need to feel like I'm holding on to something, anything, because everything else feels like it's slipping through my fingers. And here's the thing, I still love her. Or at least, I think I do. It's hard to tell anymore. I love the memory of her, the woman I married, the mother of my kids. But this Emma, the one who picks fights and leaves the house without telling me where she's going? I don't know who she is. Some nights, after the kids are asleep and the house is quiet, I sit at the kitchen table and wonder how we got here. How does a man devoted to his family, working his hands to the bone every day, end up with a wife who seems to resent him just for being around? The carpenter in me wants to believe I can fix this. That if I just work hard enough, if I keep trying, I can rebuild what's broken. But the man in me, the husband and father, is starting to wonder if this is a structure that can't be saved. It was a Thursday evening, one of those days where the work seemed endless. I'd spent 10 hours in someone else's house, fixing cabinets and building shelves, and all I wanted was to come home to my kids. They're my sanctuary, my reason for dragging myself out of bed on days when it feels like everything else is crumbling. The house was quiet when I walked in. Too quiet. Usually, Tyler would be bouncing around the living room or Lily would come running to hug me, babbling about her day at school. Instead, I found them upstairs in their room, coloring. "Hey, guys," I said, trying to sound cheerful even though the silence put a knot in my stomach. "Where's Mom?" Tyler didn't even look up from his drawing. "She's with Mr. Jake in the living room," he said casually, like it was the most normal thing in the world. "They're drinking." "Jake." "Our neighbor." I felt my chest tighten, a mix of anger and disbelief creeping in. Jake wasn't a stranger, he lived 3 doors down. We'd borrowed tools from each other, shared beers on the porch during summer nights, even helped each other with yard work. He was harmless, or so I'd thought. I made my way to the living room, my work boots feeling heavier with each step. And there they were. Emma was sprawled on the couch, her posture a mix of laziness and something calculated. She had that smirk on her face, the one that used to make me feel special but now just felt cruel. A glass of wine dangled from her fingers, and she was laughing, a loud, grating laugh that cut right through me. Jake sat awkwardly in the armchair, a beer in his hand, looking like he wished he could disappear. "Alex." Emma greeted me, her voice dripping with mock surprise. She stretched her legs out, her skirt riding up just a little too high. "Home already? Long day at work?" I froze in the doorway, my eyes darting between the two of them. Jake couldn't meet my gaze. He looked like a man caught in a trap, which, to be fair, he probably was. "But Emma?" She didn't flinch. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. Emma swirled her wine glass lazily, her smirk widening. "Relax, Alex. We're just having a drink. You know, being neighborly." She emphasized the last word, as if daring me to accuse her of something. Jake started to mumble an excuse, something about needing to get home, but Emma waved him off. "Oh, don't be such a bore," she said, her tone light but her eyes sharp. "We're all friends here, aren't we?" I turned to Jake, barely able to keep my voice from shaking. "You should go." He didn't argue. He practically bolted from the chair, mumbling a quick thanks for the beer before disappearing out the front door. That left me and Emma. She didn't even look ashamed. If anything, she looked amused, like she was watching a show and I was the main act. "What the hell was that, Emma?" I demanded, my fists clenching at my sides. She shrugged, taking another sip of her wine. "Oh, calm down. It's not like I was doing anything wrong. Can't I have a drink with a neighbor without you throwing a fit? While the kids are upstairs? While I'm at work busting my ass so you can sit here?" And I stopped myself, shaking my head. "You don't even care, do you? About me, about the kids, about any of this?" Her smirk faltered for just a second, but she quickly replaced it with sarcasm. "If you spend half as much time at home as you do busting your ass, maybe I wouldn't need to find ways to entertain myself." The words hit me like a slap. I felt my breath catch in my throat, my anger turning into something colder. She wasn't even trying to deny it. She wanted me to react, to yell, to lose my temper. But I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. "You're unbelievable," I said quietly, turning away from her. As I walked out of the room, her voice followed me, taunting. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Alex. It's just a drink. Or are you jealous?" I didn't answer. Instead, I went upstairs to check on Tyler and Lily, their innocent faces a reminder of what really mattered. That night, as I lay in bed, Emma stayed downstairs. I heard the sound of another bottle opening, her laughter drifting faintly up the stairs. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how the woman I loved had turned into someone I barely recognized. And worse, I wondered what she was capable of next. The days after that night passed like a slow-moving storm. Everything seemed calm on the surface, but the air in the house was thick, heavy with unspoken words and tension. Emma didn't mention the incident with Jake, and neither did I. It was like we'd silently agreed to pretend it hadn't happened, even though the memory of her smirk lingered in the back of my mind like a bad taste. I started coming home later than usual, throwing myself into work to avoid the house. When I did get back, Emma was usually on the couch with her wine, scrolling through her phone or watching reality TV, barely looking up when I walked in. Tyler and Lily were my focus. I made sure they had dinner, checked their homework, and read them bedtime stories. I was trying to hold it together for them, even though I felt like I was losing control of everything else. Emma seemed to notice the shift. Maybe she didn't like that I wasn't biting at her provocations, that I wasn't playing along with whatever game she decided to start. So, she doubled down. It started with little things, her coming home later and later, her laughter echoing in the hallway as she took a call from someone she wouldn't name. When I asked where she'd been, she'd shrug and say something vague, like out with friends, her tone daring me to question her further. Once, I caught her texting late at night, her face illuminated by the glow of her phone. When I walked into the room, she tilted the screen away, locking it with a casual swipe. "Can't sleep?" she asked, her tone so nonchalant it made my blood boil. "Who are you texting?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She arched an eyebrow at me, like I'd just asked the dumbest question in the world. "Why do you care?" "I'm your husband. That's why." She smirked, the same infuriating smirk I'd seen that night with Jake. "You're so paranoid, Alex. It's pathetic." Pathetic. The word hung in the air long after she turned back to her phone, dismissing me like I was some stranger she didn't know an explanation to. The worst part was, I didn't even recognize myself anymore. I was exhausted, drained from constantly trying to keep the peace while quietly wondering how much more I could take. Every day felt like I was walking a tightrope, trying not to lose my balance while Emma rattled the wires. And the kids, they were noticing. Tyler, always the observant one, started asking more questions. "Is Mom mad at you?" he asked one night, his big brown eyes looking up at me as I tucked him into bed. "No, buddy," I lied, forcing a smile. "Mom's just tired." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. Lily, on the other hand, had become even clingier. She'd follow me around the house, her little hand gripping mine like it was the only anchor she had in a sea of uncertainty. Then there were the nights when Emma wouldn't come home at all. The first time it happened, I stayed up until 3 a.m., pacing the living room, my phone in hand, debating whether or not to call her. I finally fell asleep on the couch, waking up to the sound of her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "Where were you?" I asked groggily, sitting up as she breezed past me. "Out," she said curtly, not even bothering to look at me. "Out where?" "It's 3 in the morning, Emma." She sighed, exasperated, as if I was the one being unreasonable. "I don't have to answer to you, Alex. I'm not a child." I wanted to argue, to demand an explanation, but I knew it wouldn't get me anywhere. She thrived on chaos, on pushing buttons just to see how far she could go. So, I let it go. For now. But the tipping point came a week later. I came home to find Tyler and Lily playing outside, unsupervised. They were dangerously close to the street, and my heart stopped when I saw Lily chasing a ball that had rolled into the road. I sprinted toward her, scooping her up just as a car turned the corner. My hands were shaking as I carried her back to the yard, Tyler following close behind. "Where's your mom?" I asked, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. "She's not here," Tyler said simply, as if it were a normal thing. Inside, the house was a mess, dishes piled in the sink, toys scattered everywhere, and a half-empty bottle of wine sitting on the counter. A crumpled note lay next to it, scrawled in Emma's careless handwriting, "Don't wait up. Jake's better company." That was it. The line had been crossed, and there was no going back. I stood in the kitchen, staring at that note, the words blurring as a mix of anger and heartbreak washed over me. For the first time, I realized I couldn't fix this. No amount of work, no amount of sacrifice, was going to repair what Emma had broken. The note sat on the counter, staring at me like it had something to say. "Don't wait up. Jake's better company." I read it over and over, hoping and praying that the meaning would somehow change. But the words stayed the same, scrawled in Emma's careless handwriting, the ink smudged like it was mocking me. The kids were safe upstairs, tucked in after I'd spent half an hour calming them down. Tyler asked if Mom was coming home, and Lily just hugged her stuffed bunny tight, her little face buried in my chest. "I'm here," I told them. "I'll always be here." Once they were asleep, I sat in the kitchen, staring at that damned note and the half-empty bottle of wine beside it. My hands trembled as I picked it up, and I felt the anger bubbling beneath the surface. Anger at her, anger at Jake, but most of all, anger at myself for letting it get this far. It wasn't just the note, or the wine, or even the fact that she'd left our kids unsupervised. It was everything. The months of manipulation, the nights she'd spent who knows where, the constant sense of walking on eggshells around her sharp tongue. This wasn't the woman I married. This wasn't the life I'd signed up for. I grabbed my phone and called Jenny, my sister. Jenny's always been my rock, the person I could turn to when I didn't have anyone else. She picked up on the second ring, her voice warm and familiar. "Hey, Alex. What's up?" "Jenny," I said, my voice cracking. "I need help." I told her everything, the drinking, the nights Emma stayed out, the note, the kids being left alone. Jenny didn't interrupt. She just listened, her silence more comforting than words ever could be. "Alex," she said when I finished. "You need to get out of there. You can't keep living like this, for your sake and for the kids." Her words hit me hard. I'd been so focused on holding everything together, on being the steady one for Tyler and Lily, that I hadn't stopped to think about what staying in this mess was doing to them or to me. "You can stay with us," Jenny said firmly. "Pack up the kids and come here. We'll figure it out together." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Thanks, Jenny. I'll call you tomorrow." That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emma smirk, heard her sharp words cutting through me like glass. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I called the police. Not to file a report, at least, not yet, but to document what had happened. The officer on the line listened patiently as I explained everything, the neglect, the drinking, the note. "We'll send someone out to talk to you," he said, his voice calm but serious. 2 officers arrived that afternoon. I sat at the kitchen table with them, walking through the events of the past few months. They asked questions, took notes, and left me with a case number, a small slip of paper that somehow felt heavier than it should have. "Keep documenting everything," one of them advised. "Pictures, texts, anything you can. If this goes to court, you'll want as much evidence as possible." As they left, I stood at the window, watching them drive away. It felt surreal, like I was living someone else's life, a life where my wife was a stranger and my home wasn't safe anymore. Emma didn't come home that night. Or the night after. She texted once, a single word, "busy." I didn't respond. Instead, I started collecting everything I could: photos of the wine bottles she left around the house, screenshots of her texts, even the crumpled note on the counter. I didn't know where this road was leading, but I knew I needed to be ready for whatever came next. The kids asked about her, of course. Tyler wanted to know why Mom wasn't there to read him a bedtime story, and Lily clung to me more than ever, her little voice whispering, "Don't leave, Daddy." "I'm not going anywhere," I promised her, holding her tight. And I meant it. By the 3rd day, Emma finally walked through the door. It was late, close to midnight, and she was drunk. Her dress was wrinkled, her hair a mess, and the smell of perfume clung to her like a second skin. She leaned against the doorframe, smirking at me like this was all some kind of joke. "Don't act so righteous," she slurred, her words dripping with disdain. "You're not perfect, Alex. You're just boring." Her smirk cut through me, but this time, I didn't let it show. I stood there, calm and steady, looking at her like she was a stranger I didn't care to know. "It's over, Emma," I said quietly. She blinked, the smirk faltering for just a moment before she replaced it with a scoff. "Oh, please. Don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic," I said, my voice firm. "I'm being done." For the first time in months, I felt a strange sense of peace. This wasn't a fight I needed to win anymore. This was me finally stepping off the battlefield. Emma didn't leave right away after I told her it was over. In typical fashion, she laughed it off, calling me dramatic and insisting I'd come crawling back once I calmed down. It was classic Emma, twisting the knife and pretending she wasn't holding the handle. But I wasn't playing her game anymore. The next morning, I called a lawyer. His name was Mike, a no-nonsense guy recommended by my sister Jenny. Sitting in his office, surrounded by stacks of legal books, I laid out everything: the drinking, the neglect, the kids being left alone. I even showed him the note Emma had left on the counter. "You've got a solid case," Mike said, nodding as he took notes. "But we'll need more. Keep documenting everything. Pictures, texts, videos if you can. The more evidence we have, the better your chances of getting custody. Custody. The word hit me hard. I'd been so focused on surviving day-to-day that I hadn't stopped to think about the long-term consequences. If I was going to protect Tyler and Lily, I needed to be ready for a fight. Meanwhile, Emma didn't make things easy. If anything, she ramped up her behavior. She started coming home even later, her nights out stretching into mornings. Sometimes she'd skip entire days, leaving me to handle everything with the kids. Not that I minded, I'd take Tyler and Lily over her chaos any day. Then came the second betrayal. It was a Friday night. The kids were in bed, and I was sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through a pile of bills, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Emma. "Don't wait up. At Jake's again. Zoxo." My stomach dropped. After everything that had happened, after I'd confronted her, told her it was over, she was still flaunting it, throwing her behavior in my face like it was some kind of game. I didn't respond. Instead, I grabbed my keys and drove to Jake's house. I wasn't planning to confront them. I wasn't even sure what I was doing, maybe I just needed to see it with my own eyes, to confirm what I already knew. Jake's house was dark when I pulled up, except for a single light in the living room. Through the window, I saw them, Emma perched on the arm of the couch, her dress clinging to her like a second skin, and Jake sitting stiffly beside her, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. I sat in my truck, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. For a moment, I considered going up to the door, knocking, and demanding an explanation. But what would be the point? I already had everything I needed, the note, the texts, the evidence of her neglect. Instead, I took a picture. The click of my phone's camera felt oddly satisfying, like the first swing of a hammer on a project I was finally ready to tackle. The next morning, Emma came home looking like she hadn't slept. She stumbled through the door, reeking of wine and perfume, and smirked at me like nothing was wrong. "Miss me?" she asked, her tone playful and biting. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled out my phone and showed her the picture I'd taken the night before. Her smirk disappeared in an instant. "What's this?" she asked, her voice wavering for the first time in months. "This," I said calmly, "is me documenting your behavior. For court." Her face turned pale, and for a moment, I thought she might actually apologize. But Emma being Emma, she doubled down. "Oh, please," she said, rolling her eyes. "You think you're some kind of saint? You're no better than me, Alex. You're just too much of a coward to admit it." I stared at her, the woman who used to be my partner, my friend, the mother of my children. I didn't recognize her anymore. "You can think whatever you want, Emma," I said, my voice steady. "But I'm done letting you drag me and the kids down with you." Her laugh was cold, almost cruel. "Good luck with that, Alex. You're nothing without me." Maybe she believed that. Maybe she didn't. Either way, I didn't care anymore. That evening, I filed for divorce. Emma's laugh echoed in my head long after she disappeared into the bedroom to sleep off her hangover. "You're nothing without me," she'd said. I sat in the kitchen, staring at the empty wine glass she'd left behind, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel anger. I felt resolve. She needed to understand. Not just what she'd done to me, but what she'd done to herself, to our family, to the life we'd built together. She turned her back on it all, and still had the audacity to act untouchable. That needed to change. The next morning, I waited for her to come downstairs. She dragged herself into the kitchen around 10 a.m., still in her wrinkled dress, her makeup smudged and her hair a mess. She grabbed a cup of coffee without saying a word, as if we were just two roommates sharing a space. "Sit down," I said, my voice firm. She froze, her eyes narrowing. "What is this, an intervention?" "Sit," I repeated, gesturing to the chair across from me. Something in my tone must have struck a nerve because, for once, she didn't argue. "Fine," she said, plopping down with her coffee, her expression defiant. I pulled out the file I'd been compiling over the past week, photos, screenshots of her texts, copies of the police report I'd filed about her neglecting the kids. I spread them out on the table in front of her. "What the hell is this?" she asked, her voice rising in irritation. "This," I said, tapping the papers with my finger, "is everything. Every late night, every bottle you drained, every time you left our kids alone while you were out doing God knows what. It's all here, Emma. And it's going to court. Her smirk wavered, but she tried to hold on to it. You're serious? You really think you're going to play the victim here? I don't think, Emma. I know. Because I'm not the victim here. Tyler and Lily are. Her face paled at the mention of the kids, but she quickly recovered, crossing her arms. Don't use them against me, Alex. I'm still their mother. Are you? I shot back, my voice cold. Because mothers don't leave their kids playing by the street while they're off drinking with the neighbor. Mothers don't disappear for days, leaving a note saying Jake's better company. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. You've been playing games, Emma, I continued, leaning forward. You think you're untouchable because you're good at twisting words and making me look like the bad guy. But guess what? I'm done playing. You've lost, and you don't even know it yet. Her expression shifted, the defiance cracking just a little. You're really doing this, she whispered. I am, I said, my tone steady. And here's the thing you're going to lose. Full custody is mine. Your visitation will be supervised, if you get any at all. And if you think I'm bluffing, go ahead and test me. For a moment, she just sat there, staring at the evidence laid out before her. Her shoulders slumped slightly, the weight of her actions finally sinking in. I didn't mean for it to get this bad, she said quietly, almost to herself. No, I replied, my voice sharp. You didn't mean for me to catch you. That's the difference. She flinched, and for the first time in months, she didn't have a clever comeback. Instead, she looked down at her coffee, her hands trembling slightly. You don't get to ruin my life, Emma, I said, standing up and gathering the papers. Not anymore. If you want any chance of being in Tyler and Lily's lives, you're going to have to earn it. And that starts with you taking a long, hard look in the mirror. I left her sitting there, stunned into silence, and for the first time in months, I felt like I'd reclaimed a piece of myself. The divorce process wasn't quick or easy, but it was necessary. From the moment I left Emma sitting in that kitchen, staring at the pile of evidence against her, I knew there was no turning back. And while it was painful to dismantle the life we'd built, brick by brick, it also felt like I was finally clearing the rubble to start fresh. For weeks, Emma tried to hold on to her usual tactics, smirks, sarcastic comments, and attempts to twist the narrative. But the court system doesn't run on charm and manipulation. My lawyer, Mike, made sure of that. At every turn, I presented the truth. Photos of the wine bottles she'd left scattered around the house, the texts where she'd admitted to being with Jake, the police report documenting her neglect of Tyler and Lily. I even brought in Jenny to testify about how I'd been the one holding the family together while Emma spiraled further out of control. Emma, of course, tried to flip the script. She painted me as controlling, emotionally distant, too focused on work to be a good husband. He's not as perfect as he makes himself out to be, she said in court, her voice dripping with disdain. But the evidence spoke louder than her words. The judge wasn't interested in her theatrics, only in what was best for the kids. And that's where Emma's behavior worked against her. Her drinking, her absences, her flippant attitude toward her responsibilities, they all painted a picture of a woman who had let her family fall by the wayside. In the end, the court awarded me full custody of Tyler and Lily. Emma's visitation was limited to supervised meetings at a family center until she completed a rehabilitation program. I could see the shock on her face as the judge delivered the ruling, but there was no smug satisfaction in it for me. I wasn't trying to hurt her, I was just trying to protect my kids. Jake didn't come out of it unscathed, either. The court proceedings made it clear that he'd been complicit in Emma's behavior, and the rumors that followed him around the neighborhood were enough to make him pack up and leave. I didn't care where he went, as long as he stayed far away from my family. The first few months as a single dad were hard. I won't sugarcoat it, there were nights when I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the bills and wondering how I was going to make it all work. But then Tyler would come up and show me one of his drawings, or Lily would crawl into my lap with her stuffed bunny, and I'd remember why I was doing this. We settled into a new routine. Mornings were a whirlwind of getting everyone ready for school and work, and evenings were spent around the dinner table, laughing about Tyler's jokes or helping Lily with her reading. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and it was better than the chaos we'd left behind. Emma started her rehab program a few weeks after the custody hearing. At first, I didn't know if she'd stick with it. She'd never been one for following through on things she didn't want to do. But something seemed to shift in her. Maybe it was the court's ruling, or maybe it was the realization that she'd lost more than she'd ever thought possible. She sent me a letter about a month into the program. It was short, just a few paragraphs, but it was the most honest thing I'd seen from her in years. "I know I've hurt you," she wrote. "And I know I've hurt the kids. I can't undo what I've done, but I want to try to be better. Not for us, for them. They deserve a mother who's present, who loves them, and who can put their needs first. I hope one day I can be that person." I read the letter twice before putting it away in a drawer. Forgiveness wasn't something that came easily after everything we'd been through, but I wasn't holding on to bitterness for her sake. I was letting it go for mine and for the kids. By the time Emma finished rehab, she was allowed supervised visits with Tyler and Lily. The kids were hesitant at first, unsure of how to approach her after so much distance. But Emma surprised me. She showed up to every visit, sober and steady, and for once, she didn't try to manipulate the situation. Over time, the kids started warming up to her. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't fast, but it was progress. I made it clear that I wouldn't tolerate any backsliding, and to her credit, Emma seemed to take that seriously. As for me, I focused on building something new, not just for the kids, but for myself. I threw myself into work, taking on more projects and even starting a side business building custom furniture. It was therapeutic in a way, turning raw materials into something solid and beautiful. Eventually, I started to find peace. The house wasn't filled with tension anymore. The laughter of Tyler and Lily echoed through the halls, a reminder of what mattered most. There are still moments when the past creeps in, when I catch myself wondering what went wrong, or when I see a flicker of sadness in Tyler's or Lily's eyes. But those moments are fewer and farther between. Life isn't perfect, but it's mine. And after everything, that's enough. What do you think of Emma's attempt to portray Alex as boring? Is that a common justification for infidelity, and is it valid? How do you handle situations where someone you trust completely betrays you? Write in the comments what do you think about this.